Welcome to the I Hate Critics Movie Review Podcast. I am professional film critic Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff.
Hello, one and all. I had to say that because I'm sick of saying howdy.
Visit us on Facebook, although nobody seems to. I don't update it. Do you update it? Somebody should be updating that. I shouldn't have.
Yeah, we should.
I should never have hired Amy to update Facebook. She still thinks she's pinning things to a tree outside her house.
Oh, maybe she is.
But social media is a thing or something. And, you're listening to the show already. Why do you care?
Right? You know what? If you're listening, you go to our Facebook page and you say something to us.
Hey, if you're listening right now, why don't you go update our Facebook page? How about that? Get off my back. All right.
Well, after this weekend, I will not be as busy, so hopefully I'll be able to do that more.
Cool. All right. Let's see. Jeff, what are you promoting this week?
This weekend, I will be in Ottumwa, Iowa at Halloween-a-Palooza. And this is kind of a big deal. They're going to have casts from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, 5. Signing autographs, doing photo ops, meeting their fans, all that kind of stuff. So I'm working on a couple part 4 and part 5 pieces to hopefully have autographed and go from there.
Very cool. Very cool. I love events where I love it, especially when you get a chance to meet these people. You always come away with great stories.
Oh yeah, most of them are very nice, except Christy Swanson.
Blame Alan Thicke for that, but we don't want to talk about that.
Oh no, I blame Donald Trump for that. She's a big Trumper.
Let's see here. Let's get into some news. What do you say? Christopher Nolan has set his next movie, the follow-up to Oppenheimer. Matt Damon is going to be the star, and the film is aiming for a release on July 17th of 2026. We don't know what it's going to be about. There's really
no... Is it a sequel to Oppenheimer?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what it's going to be about, but, Nolan has been kind of my director. I mean, the man's not really missed much with me.
Well, he's okay.
I know Bob hates him, but still.
I mean, part of my thing with directors like him is that it sometimes feels like they just pick, they don't, like they could never direct just a straight up horror movie. They'd always have to go for some huge epic that, gets their Oscars and whatever. They just don't, they can't do, like, I don't think he could ever direct Friday the 13th. And, for some people, good. But for me, I'm like, come on, do something different. Doesn't always have to be an epic, Chris.
We don't know that this will be an epic. We can't assume.
Fuck you. Oh, give me a fucking break. Of course it will be, because he's constitutionally incapable of doing anything that's not on an epic scale.
Maybe.
Tell me I'm...
have you ever seen Following? That was made for $26,000.
The Prestige. Movie.
Following is a great movie, by the way. If you've not seen Following, it's exceptional. Also, Sydney Sweeney's announced her next movie. She's in negotiations to join Amanda Seyfried in a movie directed by Paul Feig called The Housemaid. Sweeney's going to play a struggling woman who is relieved to get a fresh start as a housemaid to Nina, played by Amanda Seyfried, and Andrew, who has not been cast yet. And they're a wealthy couple, and of course, family secrets and danger are coming with that. So I like Paul Feig. I like what he does, and I like that he does such diverse filmmaking. He directs comedies. He can direct big big movies like Ghostbusters, and if this is anything like what he did with Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick, I think this could be pretty good.
Yeah, see, he could do an epic in Friday the 13th, unlike Christopher Nolan.
I bet his Friday the 13th would be pretty incredible.
I agree. It would be more part 4 than part 5.
Checking out one last piece of news, Beetlejuice is already dropping on streaming today, which is odd. I think a lot of people kind of surprised by that, because if you look at the box office numbers, Beetlejuice made $10.1 million over the weekend and ranked third in the box office, and it's also like with Halloween season, it's becoming this massive kind of underground phenomenon. Somehow I don't understand it. It's becoming a phenomenon with the very, very young who have fallen in love with, I guess people, a new generation finding the Tim Burton aesthetic, Jeff, which is just what we needed.
They're finding Jenna Ortega. Tell me I'm lying. I had so many people looking at my Wednesday print and sticker this weekend for their kids. I think I sold out of the prints, actually. So Jenna Ortega is a goddamn star.
She is. She was also grafted onto that movie like a limb.
Well, that movie was made up of, like, they took a book and they ripped out pages and they stuck them together, and then they just wrote a story around that. It's like movie by committee.
And just they're leaving. It feels like they're leaving money on the table doing this. I feel like with Halloween right around the corner, and people, kids getting dressed up in Halloween costumes to go back and see Beetlejuice one more time. I mean, I guess they could still do that, but this seems to undermine that just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think their parents are going to be like, "Oh yeah, let's go to the theater again. Put your Beetlejuice costume on."
I mean, they might have if it wasn't, available in their home.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's like, why would they?
It's a weird choice to me, and you got to figure they're trying to, I don't know, maybe they just noticed an empty market. Like it is a pretty empty field when it comes to what is available currently in terms of the top streaming titles. So I guess that does make sense. But beyond that, I think, like I said, I think they're leaving a lot of money on the table, considering this thing's still making double figure millions at the box office.
I agree, but what do we know? We don't run Hollywood.
It's not like Terrifier is not going to blow it out of the water this weekend. I mean, Terrifier's got a different audience than what Beetlejuice has cultivated, especially among children.
Yeah, exactly.
And if
speaking of which, people are already, like, in some of the screenings, have already left in the first 10 minutes vomiting. I can't wait.
Yeah, I've seen The Substance, so I don't think Terrifier 3 can really do much to me. I'm already armored in The Substance. There's nothing. I've seen Terrifier 2, and I sat all the way through Terrifier 2. And I've seen Terrifier 1, and I sat all the way through Terrifier 1. And I sat through all of The Substance, but I'll never do it again.
You know what? I wanted to go see The Substance again. It's already out of the theaters.
That's insane.
It's the best movie of the year, and it's already out of theaters. But here we still have, like, bullshit that came out 6 weeks ago.
Somehow Speak No Evil is still in theaters. How does that work? I love Speak No Evil, but, like, come on.
Yeah, it's a good movie, but it's like a month and a half old.
What is Netflix running things at these theaters now, where they're just gonna pull it out before it can ever actually build a buzz?
Cinemark.
Yeah. Wild weekend apparently coming up at the box office, because, like, there's the weirdest lineup of new movies you could possibly imagine. We've got Terrifier 3. We've got Piece by Piece, which is apparently a Pharrell Williams biography with Legos, I guess.
That explains why there were Pharrell Legos at the Target. Somebody asked me about it, and I said, I don't know.
Then the Saturday Night Live movie, directed by Jason Reitman, is coming this weekend. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, a rare documentary. Could it be on a big screen? You rarely ever see that. And The Apprentice, the Donald Trump movie starring Sebastian Stan, is also going to be starting this weekend.
Well, I'm definitely going to see Terrifier, and I think the next movie I will see is probably The Apprentice. I'm not going to see the Pharrell movie. I'm sorry. It's going to be way too busy of a weekend, but
yeah, I'm going to see just anything except for, I'm not going to see Piece by Piece. That's not going to happen.
yeah.
I don't know. I have no willingness to sit through another Lego movie after the last ones. But yeah, Terrifier 3, I think, is going to be huge. And I'm excited about this Saturday Night Live movie. I like Jason Reitman. He takes risks. He can be overly conventional sometimes, but he can also, give you something pretty amazing. And yeah, a little hit or miss, I guess. I'm not sure where this came from. Like, this just seemed to emerge out of nowhere on the radar, and just suddenly it's here now. But I'm intrigued.
Well, that's on my list too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's on my list. Terrifier 3 is an absolutely must watch. So we'll be definitely talking about that next week.
Let's get into some
new talk about anything you want to watch, but
yeah, let's get into some new movies. I want to talk first, get one out of the way, because there's only one other new movie, and that's of course the big one of the weekend that we'll get into. But first, I just want to mention White Bird is in theaters now. I know no one's going to see this. No one went to see it. You should go see it. It's among the best movies of the year. Not at the top or anything, but certainly this movie is just beautifully, emotionally, exceptionally well told. Helen Mirren stars in this as a Holocaust survivor, or survivor of World War II. She didn't actually end up in a concentration camp, but some of her family did. She was in Germany at the time, and she ends up being sheltered by a young man who she had previously kind of been a bully to. And he shelters her for 2 years, he and his family, in this barn on their property, amid the World War II and the growing presence of Nazis in France. She's actually not in Germany. She's in France. Sorry. The family's in France. And she's telling this story to her grandson, who has recently been kicked out of his school. And this relates back to the movie Wonder, about a little boy with a physical deformity. And the bully in that movie is the grandson in this movie. He got kicked out of his school for being a bully to the kid in Wonder, and now he's in this movie, and his grandmother is telling him this story about love and compassion and, caring for people. And it has a profound impact on him. We don't see much of that because we're spending most of our time in the past telling this story about what happened during World War II. And it's a really lovely kind of romantic as well, because these two develop a very close relationship, and a tragic story as well. It's beautifully told, and I didn't know going into this. I was kind of had very low expectations because Wonder was fine. It served its purpose. It was a very easy to digest message and family movie. And so I wasn't thinking much of this one being a sequel to that. I thought, well, okay, this will just be another easily digestible family movie. But then I found out as I'm watching the opening credits, this is directed by Marc Forster. And Marc Forster is one of the most underrated geniuses to ever direct a film. The man rarely ever misses. I mean, the guy he takes huge swings. He's incredibly inventive. His visual style is just off the charts. He's always trying to come up with a new and different way to make a movie. And that's obviously hampered his career a great deal, because there's a lot of studios that don't want to hire him because he does tend to spend a little bit of money to do what he does. But he never makes a boring movie. I mean, not even that A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. That's not a boring movie. And he just doesn't do that. He made a movie called Stay with Ewan McGregor, which is one of the least seen movies in history, and it's one of the best as well. The guy just is incredible, and he takes this story that would seem very basic and kind of hallmarky in the hands of a lot of directors and makes it into something. I mean, if there was any justice in the world, more people would know about this, and we'd be discussing Academy Award nominations, but we're not, because no one's going to see this. No one knew it came out, and I don't understand why and how studios do the things that they do. Why are you putting movies in theaters and not telling anybody that they're there?
Yeah.
Blows my mind. This has got to be some kind of scheme, right? I'm not trying to get into conspiracy theories. There has to be some kind of like for-profit scheme going on in putting a movie in theaters and then telling no one that you put it out.
Is it a tax thing? Like they can
It's got to be, right?
A loss?
I mean, there's got to be some reason because this doesn't make any sense. They've made.
So is it a sequel to Wonder?
It is an offshoot of the Wonder franchise. It is technically, I guess you could call it a sequel because it does take a character from that movie and kind of follow up on his story after he got kicked out of that school for bullying the kid in Wonder. He's now in this movie, so they're related. I guess you could technically call it a sequel, and they were trying to create something of a Wonderverse off of the success of Wonder. I don't know if they're still doing that, but they were talking about doing that, and that was kind of the genesis of this movie. But then they hired Marc Forster and made an actual movie.
Nice.
I loved this. I thought it was incredible. I cried. I was just deeply moved. Helen Mirren is amazing in it. Even though she's just in the framing story, she still has a complete impact on how the story is told. And you really, even as you might assume you see things coming, you really don't, because the direction is so very, very good. And it doesn't even, you go into this assuming this is going to linger on tragedy, and this is going to linger on the elements that make you sad, or just the darker elements, that kind of emotional porn, if you will. And this doesn't. This has that aspect of it. That's an aspect, but it's not the only thing. It focuses mostly on how this young boy tried to keep this young girl alive, but also the way he tried to help her live a rich life while still being trapped in a barn for 2 years. And that's fucking beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, I never heard of it until you just said it. So,
well, catch it on streaming in like a week, I guess, because that's probably where it's going to go. It's going to go to the Netflix burial ground or the Hulu burial ground or wherever movies go to die. That's where it's going to end up. It is so bizarre. Like I was just kind of observing a conversation on Twitter the other day where a creator was talking about a movie called It Lives Inside, which is now apparently on Netflix. Nobody noticed it, but it was big at the Toronto Film Festival last year. It was big at Sundance, and then Netflix bought it and didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, that's Netflix's go-to. That's why I canceled my subscription a long time ago, because they have all these great movies, but they don't tell you about it, and then you try to go watch them and they're not available anymore, and it's just so stupid.
I don't get the strategy. There's got to be, again, going back to the conspiracy. Is Netflix just a pyramid scheme of some kind? Is there?
Well, I mean, probably.
There's got to be something going on. There's got to be some kind of transfer of wealth going on somehow. I don't know. Maybe somebody in Silicon Valley can break ranks and tell us what the actual scam is as to why Netflix spends so much money on things, doesn't tell anybody that they did it, and then cancels it with barely any notice. Or in the case of this movie, like in case of It Lives Inside, it's available. You can watch it right now. But did anybody tell you it was there until now? I mean, was there anything online other than, I guess there was a conversation that I saw that put me on to the fact that it was there. But like, man, I guess there's still a place. It means there's still a place for people like us, Jeff, who are going to tell you, that something's out there that we saw.
I mean, yeah, I know there's a movie that I want to talk about possibly next week if we can or maybe closer to Halloween, called Haunt Season. But I only heard about that because I know the guy who did the special effects on it.
That's crazy. That is
So,
absolutely insane. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk first about, let's prep people up with a little bit of Joker talk. Take us back to 2019 for you, Jeff, and because you were on the show in 2019, so tell us about how you reacted to the first Joker.
I was like, oh, cool. I've seen King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. Why did I watch this movie? It was fine. I mean, I listened to Todd Phillips on a podcast, and it, intrigued me before I saw it. So I was like, oh, I'll go see it. And then I just was kind of underwhelmed. It just seemed sort of like the glorification of an incel, and it really didn't have anything to do with the Joker. So I was pretty disappointed in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I ended up buying it on Blu-ray for like $7 at Black Friday, and to see if I liked it any better. And I still haven't rewatched it. I didn't even rewatch it for this week because it didn't seem necessary.
I did. I watched it right before I went to see the new film, which we'll get to in a moment. But we had a very a very divided reaction on the show at the time. We had myself and Bob and Josh were all there, and Bob and Josh were really high on it. They really liked it. Josh especially was really behind it, and I had to be that guy going, "That's not very good." I didn't like the streak of nihilism that seemed to run through it. I didn't know what Todd Phillips was really going for, and what the thing that really kind of bugged me the whole time was, what is a dream and what is real, or what is a fantasy and what is real. And Todd Phillips doesn't do a very good job of delineating between when he's indulging in his fantasy world and when he's telling you the truth, and this is what really is happening. So how do you know? And you get to the end of Joker, and it's as if he's telling you, oh, none of that happened. This has all just been a dream. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, and it felt to me like a hedged bet. Like if somebody pushed back against Joker, he could just say, oh, no, none of that stuff happened. He's mentally ill. None of that happened. Or maybe it did. You have to stick around, maybe. I don't know. And I really just despised that approach, and it made me really not like Joker.
Yeah, it was very underwhelming. It was not. I thought at the time it might be something that I would revisit. That's why I bought it, just because maybe I just need to step back a little bit and get to a more hopeful place in the world. Good luck with that. And no, it just never happened.
So I watched it again, and I had the very same reaction that I had previously. And I was watching this like directly before I went to see Joker 2, as I was watching this and just kind of having the same reaction to it. I'm not liking it. I don't think I completely hated it, because I don't think it's poorly made, and it's certainly not poorly acted. But
no, it's competent.
Yeah. As Todd Phillips tends to be, he tends to be a pretty competent director. And so there are elements that of Joker, the first film, that I didn't mind, but I just didn't understand what the full view of it was, what the full purpose of what he was going for was. And I think now, after having seen Folie, Deux, I think I understand now that this is all one big story. And it kind of makes me appreciate the first Joker just a little bit, if not completely. So Joker Folie Deux is the big new movie of the weekend, and starring once again Joaquin Phoenix in the role of Arthur Fleck, and he's on trial for the things he did in the first film, 5 murders, although he actually committed 6 murders because they don't know that he killed his mom. They will learn that. He'll just openly go ahead and tell people that eventually. But yeah, the story picks up with that. He's in Arkham prison, and there's also a mental hospital next door. I was kind of hoping this was the same like men's and women's prison rehab that from The Crow, but it's not.
Hoping?
Well, if you're going to go full debacle, please make it a complete debacle. But he through this, he ends up in a music therapy class where Harley Quinn or Quinn or Harley, what does she call herself? Quinn. No. Lee. Thank you. It was what I know it was in there somewhere. Lee, played by Lady Gaga, is there, and she's a mental patient. She says she's been committed by her parents. We'll learn that's probably not true, and that most of the things she says probably aren't true. She and Arthur form a relationship that's true and false in some ways. Again, there we have more of Todd Phillips failing between his trying to determine what is a fantasy and what is the reality of anything that he does, and that gets pretty frustrating. But this is a musical, so there's occasionally they're going to break into what are obviously fantasies, which are him and Lee hosting their very own Sonny and Cher style variety show, or him breaking into song, and then it's just him singing about how happy that Lee has made him in this. Meanwhile, during his trial, Catherine Keener is his lawyer. She's trying to build the case that Joker and Arthur Fleck are two different persona living in one man, and that's what led him to commit the crimes that he's committed. So he's crazy, essentially, is the argument. And that's basically where this is headed, is that we're getting to a point where he's going to fire his lawyer, and he's going to maybe move into the Joker persona fully at Lee's behest, or maybe something else will happen. The point is that we can't talk about this movie without talking about the ending. So we have to have spoilers, because the ending of this movie is the definitive aspect of this. Leading up to the end, Jeff, I felt fine with the movie. Like I was kind of, okay, where's this? But how are we going to get to, where are we going with this? And the ending changes everything for me. But why don't you give me your impression leading up to the ending of the movie?
This was a really mixed bag for me. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Lady Gaga. I think she's an amazing performer. She's got a gorgeous voice. Every time she was on screen, I was riveted. I'm not going to lie. The first half hour of this movie, I kept falling asleep at my seat. I just kept drifting off, and I know that's partially because I work really early and I never, didn't take a nap or anything afterward, but it really, really was kind of a little boring up, the first half hour. Well, then she shows up, and it's like the entire movie shifts. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Joaquin Phoenix is an incredible actor. He's really, really good in this part. But we've seen him before. We've seen what he does as Joker, as Arthur Fleck, and we have not seen what she's going to do as Harley Quinn. And she just kind of rivets you to the screen. And then when they're doing the musical numbers and she's singing, it's like it just jumps up 10 points for me. I did see the end kind of coming in retrospect, because there's one character who's a background character that gets lingered on too many times for it to not, for him to not come back. So, yeah, I was bored, then I was riveted, then I was kind of bored. And then I was riveted again at the end, leading up to the very, very last part of the end. But
I love the ending of this movie, and I think it changes everything that came before it. The movie ends with Arthur Fleck being stabbed to death in the prison after he has fully confessed everything about Joker and how just come clean and said he doesn't want to have, he's not, going to be that person anymore or whatever. And pretty much he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And then he gets stabbed to death. And I wasn't surprised necessarily, but I was just kind of delighted, if I may, because for me, what this means, and what I think a lot of people have missed in this, is that Arthur Fleck isn't Joker. He's not the Joker. He's not the DC comic Joker. He is essentially what Arthur Fleck is the origination of the concept that will go on to become the Joker that then Batman would face off with. And it suddenly, for me, that makes Arthur Fleck and the story that Todd Phillips told in the first film into this one, it makes a lot more sense, because nothing about the way that Joaquin Phoenix has played this character or the way that Todd Phillips has written this character makes any sense with the way we've seen Joker from the comic books to TV, to media, to other media, to movies. This guy's nothing like that. And it always kind of, I didn't know what kind of purpose this had. What Todd Phillips for me has given us is the actual origin story, not only of Joker as a concept that will go on to be embodied by someone else as the Joker, but also the origin story of Gotham City. How does a city go from being a seemingly normal kind of offshoot of our New York City to the kind of vision that both Tim Burton and Christopher Nolan and now Matt Reeves have had of what Gotham City is, this kind of out of control place that is constantly teetering on the edge of complete chaos. And this kind of lays the groundwork for that, because what Arthur Fleck did on television in the first film, shooting Marty Franklin in the head, has touched off what will become the Gotham City that will actually need to have Batman. And to me, that that's kind of awesome. Actually, I kind of like it. It kind of makes me like this now. And I don't know what other people are like. I don't understand why everybody's so upset about this movie. That to me made it make complete sense. But there's a lot of people who are very angry about this movie, and I don't understand what they're upset about. I mean, I get that some of it's not very good, but that's a pretty cool ending.
I actually liked this better than the first one most of the time.
Yeah.
Especially with Lady Gaga, because I don't think this Joker works without a foil or without somebody to play off of. And given that he has somebody to play off of now, I liked him more. I thought he had a weird joy in some of his performance with her that I thought was missing from the first one. And I mean, obviously, because of the way that, he was portrayed in the first one, why would he, have any joy? But I don't know. I just, I think I liked this one better than the other one.
I truly could have gone either way on this movie by the time the ending arrived. I was kind of somewhere in the middle on it. And then when the ending arrived and it felt like the full vision came into perspective for me of how does Arthur Fleck fit into this whole, DC universe. And I love the idea of him being the way that the actual, Batman universe comes into being. I also did kind of enjoy some of the stuff that happened in the trial. I kind of enjoyed seeing Zazie Beetz again and having Arthur have to confront those things that he thought were real that weren't. Because if you take that relationship from the first movie, he does such a poor job of integrating her parts into that movie, because he's trying to toy with fantasy and reality. But now with that fully established as to what was fantasy and what was reality there, that makes that feel a little bit more whole from the first film and makes me kind of appreciate again where he ends up with that. She provides Zazie Beetz' character with her testimony in this movie kind of provides a whole new perspective that's kind of settles things for me from that first film and made me appreciate what they were going for there. I just his conversations with his going back and forth with the other witnesses was also quite good. Again, to recontextualize what we saw in the first film into this film. I did like that. I liked what he was doing. I liked when he went into Joker as a lawyer. I liked that aspect of it. That kind of felt like, oh, is this where we're going? Like, this is how he embraces the Joker persona that moves on. But no, they don't do that. And it's even braver at the end to get rid of him and admit that this guy was never going to be that.
And he does that folksy kind of Matlock thing.
Yeah.
When he's the lawyer, and I caught that right away. I was like, "Oh, and I think you think that I am this way," and I'm like, "Oh, that's funny."
It was first time really that he was having fun with it. It was the first time where he stepped into having fun in this. But then I did again. I liked that they turned that back on him, and at the end when Harley breaks his heart and tells him that she can't be with him because he's not Joker. I was like, that makes sense. Actually, that tracks. I like, she's seeing this guy for who he really is, and she's lost interest because she's more of an agent of chaos than he is. He's kind of led around by her. He kind of wants to do things as Joker simply to impress her because, again, he's never been Joker. He's never really embraced that. Aside from killing people is really just part of his pathology, but he doesn't take any joy in doing it. He doesn't he's in terms of his psychopathy, he didn't seem to do this for any other reason than he felt like this is what I have to do right now.
Yeah, he watched Taxi Driver too many times.
Exactly. Like he is such a construct of all the things that happen to him, as opposed to being somebody who pushes things to happen. And Joker, the Joker, as the character we know, is a guy who makes things happen. He is a much more forward-thinking character who does things with purpose, and I love that. Again, the ending tells you this guy was never really the Joker, and it kind of flips all of your expectations back on you. Thus, if you're disappointed in how this character is the Joker, then then you've kind of missed the point. You've missed the point of the movie. He's not the Joker.
That's why it's called just Joker, not the Joke.
Perhaps. I mean, I didn't really think about that, but perhaps.
That's the way I saw it anyway, that,
I don't know. I don't know the level of hatred that people have had for this kind of boggles my mind. I don't see
I can tell you exactly where that is, Sean.
Go ahead.
That is because fucking Hollywood does not market a musical as a musical anymore. And this was 100% a musical. Everything I heard people bitching about was the fact that I didn't know this was a musical. Why is this a musical? It shouldn't be a musical. It was always talked about as a musical. Todd Phillips said, "Oh, we're going to put Lady Gaga in it. It's going to be Harley Quinn, and it's going to be a musical." He said that from the jump, and people that don't pay attention to movies in Hollywood the way we do would never know that because of the trailers. Wicked is coming out. Wicked is a Broadway fucking musical, and you wouldn't know it from any of the trailers. Hollywood has to stop that, or we're going to end up getting more stuff like this, where it's a musical and everybody's pissed about it. Sorry, that's my little soapbox.
No, you're right. You're onto something. You're definitely onto something. The way that Hollywood handles musicals is weird, but it's the same way they handle seemingly everything these days is kind of weird because they don't. I don't know. Hollywood seems ashamed of putting out movies.
That's not wrong.
It's like they're trying to apologize for having made movies. By not telling anybody that they're doing it.
Exactly.
So weird. This is what happens though when you let Silicon Valley bros or hedge fund bros run studios. You end up with shit like, well, you can't tell people it's a musical.
I don't like musicals, so don't tell anybody it's a musical. But go ahead and make your little musical.
It's apparently a whole thing where like Todd Phillips refused to talk to the folks at Warner Brothers. He refused to talk to the folks at DC. He wouldn't meet with Gunn about the movie, and just went ahead and made his movie. And to me, like, again, I know it sounds, I'm gonna sound like I'm apologizing for Todd Phillips, but I mean, I get it. I don't want, who advocates for studio interference, which I guess I've actually seen a couple of headlines going, maybe you should have let the studio interfere. Like, why? No, actually, no. Let's keep the studio out and let's see what happens, because that's going to give you something. I mean, you can't argue that Joker is that Joker is original. I mean, in terms of approach to the character and approach to a comic book property, this is an original idea.
Yeah, and it was much better than I thought it was going to be. So I apologize for shitting all over it all week in my head.
I had fully expected for this to be yet another nihilistic celebration of, incel culture and just angry at women, that kind of thing. I was just ready for that to happen again. And it did. And when it didn't, I think a lot of my praise for this movie, I don't think this is one of the best movies of the year or anything. I think I still think that Todd Phillips struggles to integrate fantasy and reality. And I think he took too long, especially he took the entire first movie until now to try and help you understand why he wants you to sympathize with Arthur Fleck. And he does want that. He demonstrates it throughout that he wants to turn Arthur into a sympathetic character, or at least have you feel for some aspects of him. Obviously not the murderous side of him, but certainly the abused, the put upon sadness. He wants you to identify with and feel compassion for this character, which is kind of bold considering, we all have a perception of who Joker is, and it's not a sympathetic character. So I get it. And this movie makes that more plain by revealing that he's not the Joker, by revealing that he's just this really troubled guy whose actions leads to Joker, leads to chaos, leads to the kind of criminal stuff that is what Gotham City and the Batman universe becomes. And when you put that whole vision together, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very satisfying.
Well, it could also, like the way you say it, it could be that the guy that rescues him from the bombing at the end
mm-hmm.
and puts him in the car, that could end up being the Joker that we all know and love.
Exactly. Or it could be the guy who stabbed him. I mean, again, there are various different ways.
And if you didn't notice, after he stabbed him and Arthur fell and he started laughing, he went and he carved his mouth with the knife. So yeah, that makes even more sense.
But again, he doesn't tell you specifically who is going to be the Joker. I mean, that guy could just spend the rest of his life in jail and never gets heard from again. And Joker is just somebody who happened to be watching TV the night that Arthur Fleck shot, Marty Franklin.
Yeah.
And that leaves open the entire DC universe and again, a lot of people were kind of wondering too, after the first film, how does this, how does this Joker face off with Batman? Or how does this, he doesn't, because he's not the Joker. He's a guy who originates the concept of Joker.
Yeah, I liked this one better than I thought I was going to. And like I said, a lot of that is due to the Lady Gaga of it all. Another part of it, I think, is due to the low expectations I had going in.
Same. So a lot of my praise for this movie is coming from extraordinarily low expectations and having those expectations exceeded, but also just feeling like I understand now what the first movie was about. It makes this whole thing feel so much more satisfying. And I feel like I do understand now what Todd Phillips was trying to do. I think he could have done it better. I think his sort of approach does tend to linger too much on certain things. And I think he overdid the torture porn of the first film where just everything bad happens to Arthur. Uh, and he overdid that a great deal. He overdoes the whole thing with, like, the trope of the bully prison guard is one that could have been subverted in some way. They could have found a way to subvert that somehow, not necessarily make one of them a good guy, but just make him a better character. I guess.
Yeah.
Because that was just so needless. It was just a way to remind you that Arthur is put upon by everybody and everybody's against him. And we got that, Todd. We got it. Everybody hates this guy. And reasonably so. Like, Joaquin Phoenix's performance makes so much more sense based off of how this movie ends and how this movie proceeds, because I think he understood the vision from the beginning that this is a character study of a very troubled man whose life will lead to what the comic book story will become. And viewing it from that perspective, it tells me, that Joaquin Phoenix kind of understood this assignment from the beginning, that he's not playing the Joker, and that this character, he doesn't have any of the aspects of the Joker that we associate with him. And he has zero charm. He has zero riz. This guy is completely unappealing. Not that I find the Joker appealing, but as Jack Nicholson played him, he's funny. As Heath Ledger played him, he's terrifying, but also very, very, like, you can't take your eyes. Very charismatic, terrifying, but very charismatic. I mean, and there is none of that in Arthur Fleck, and that kind of makes it kind of brilliant when you break it down, and then you realize that he must have known all along how this was going to end. That's it. That makes it more interesting, more exciting for me.
Yeah, the Joker should always have charisma, and he had none. So that that says a lot about what they were going for, I think. So I think they set out to do something, and it blew people's expectations because they don't have the imagination that you do in thinking about something like, this is not the Joker, it's just Joker. So yeah, I think that's the best way to look at this movie and still feel like they've really accomplished what they went for. So
if I have just one more criticism, I do have to say hiring an actual child to play Harvey Dent was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, nothing against that young actor. He's a good looking kid. He looks like he's 10. He looks like he's in his suit in the 80s. He looks like he's a 10-year-old trying to prosecute Arthur Fleck. And I just would not have cast that young man in that role.
Agreed.
But that said, that was a needless criticism, and we'll move on from it to our classic this week, which is a movie I thought I'd seen that I've actually never seen before, called Maniac.
Ooh.
I never saw this movie. I thought for sure I'd seen this movie, but I
thought you had too.
I mean, I think I might have seen something like it. I mean, there are a lot of movies that are like this, or hold a similar premise, but that are not this. This is something very different. Maniac stars Joe Spinell as Frank Zito, a deeply, deeply troubled individual who murders women because he was abandoned and abused by his mother. And this movie is quite something. Early work from Tom Savini, with some, and I didn't even need to see his name in the credits to know that when a guy got his head blown off sitting in a car, oh, that's Tom Savini.
Yeah, that was literally Tom Savini. Not just his work.
Mm-hmm. His signature is so very, very clear in everything in this. The blood's just a little bit brighter. The brutality is just a little bit more brutal in that classic Tom Savini style. There are some terrific set pieces in here. There are some that go a little bit long. You can definitely see the low budget aspect of it, but what you cannot deny, Jeff, is the performance of Spinell, which is just so deeply committed. I would not want to be alone in a room with that man. He is.
Well, and we
Go
we were
ahead.
talking about charisma and the Joker, and he is Joe Spinell was a not good looking man in any sense of the word, but he had a charisma that makes you believe that him and Carolyn Monroe could go on a date and she could be charmed by him. He's very charming when he wants to be, and he's terrifying sometimes even when he doesn't want to be. Um, just his presence is like there's two sides to it, and which side are you going to get? It just depends on the situation.
Yeah, his mood seemed to blow with the wind, really. He seemed like a killer most of the time, and then he could turn it when he could turn it off. It became terrifying that he was able to kind of turn it off for a minute, and then of course it would turn right back on. Um, I was kind of fascinated by there's a subtle like almost gay coding to him at a certain
Yeah.
point, and I thought that for me sold the romantic element, and that softness that he kind of gives off. Not softness. I don't know what I mean. I don't associate that with gay, but I mean
Unthreatening
unthreatening quality.
women.
Yes, unthreatening to a woman. I thought that quality would be appealing to a woman like her.
Yeah, she's a very worldly person, and I think she has probably met guys like him before. The character I'm talking about, obviously.
Right.
She's probably met guys like him before that are not maybe a little, like mama's boy, obviously, um, but not seemingly unthreatening because they might have a little, softness to them, not necessarily gay but that feeling of, oh, he's not he's not like he's an okay guy. He's just not conventionally attractive, but he's got charm and moxie,
Yeah.
confidence. So,
He's certainly not the guy that you're going to end up with, but he's a guy who will walk you home a couple of nights
yeah.
and leave you at the door, very kindly.
Before he breaks in later.
To cut off your scalp and steal your hair, to put it on a mannequin, which is quite the invention. You gotta say that is. I don't know what that's based off of. I don't know how anybody thought of that as a concept, but I'm glad that they did.
It's a little Auggie. A little bit,
A
not
little bit.
fully, but yeah, that was. There's just something about this movie, and I heard about it before I ever saw it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, reading Fangoria magazine, I think is where the first time I saw it, something about it. And then, reading other stuff about it, and I remember seeing it for the first time. I was in college actually, and rented it at like one of I think Sound Warehouse. And wow, it was just like, holy shit, this movie is everything I wanted it to be and more. Tom Savini is a master of horror effects for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is early. There's a movie called Eyes of a Stranger with
Mm-hmm.
Lauren Hughes from The Love Boat. And a very similar story, actually, of, a madman killing people. And, but that time, Lauren Hughes figures it out. But Tom Savini's early work. This is the same time as Friday the 13th, and I don't remember if they reused the Mrs. Voorhees severed head, or the body part of that, but I think so because there's that one scene at the end where all the bodies are coming back, and there's the severed head just kind of moving around and spurting blood, and I think that probably was the same one.
What a cameo!
Yeah, right.
I think I went into this like assuming it was going to be something like Driller Killer or just something exploitative that was that had been put out specifically to take advantage of the fact that we're only like 2 years removed from David Berkowitz, which I think a lot of people.
Cool.
I think the main reason that Maniac became as controversial as it was is that comparison, is that time frame especially in New York, where people are associating this directly with the Son of Sam. This isn't the Son of Sam. I mean, yes, he does shoot somebody, but he. I don't know what Berkowitz's overall. Berkowitz was insane, but he wasn't about his mom. At least I don't think it was.
He was actually that's not entirely true, because he was adopted, and he did have an issue with not knowing his birth mother.
So was this an attempt to exploit that?
No, I don't think so. But I just want to set the record straight before somebody writes a nasty note. Yeah, this is just it's. So when we talked about the substance, I told you about Hollywood Boulevard and how that little part could have been excised as a short, and it would have told you everything you need to know about Hollywood Boulevard after night falls.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I imagine the seedy New York of the 80s was, late 70s, early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that not quite, it's not quite Taxi Driver or anything, but it still has that grit and grime and makes you want to kind of take a shower. Especially my favorite sequence is the sequence where the nurse is in the subway.
Mm-hmm.
And the cat and mouse, and then you think he's finally given up. She thinks he's finally given up. We all know that there's no way this guy's giving up.
Well, there's no way they're going to leave this character they just introduced to get away after all of this time, because that sequence goes on for a long while.
But she thinks it's fine, and she bends over to wash her face, and then he's in the mirror when she comes up, and it's just so effective. And I think, and it's because it's gone on for a while, and because we know, but she thinks something else. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that.
And that's that one of the things that we got to credit the director William Lustig for is patience. He's very patient in allowing Joe Spinell plenty of room to do what he's doing, and also to let these sequences bubble for a little bit before launching into the gruesomeness.
And he does launch into the gruesomeness.
He really does. He really does.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for Joe Spinell. I think he's like Zelig in a way, because he shows up in so many different movies and places that really set the tone for the time. He was in Cruising. He played one of the cops who picks up the hookers and forces them to give him head in their patrol car. He's in the woods in Central Park at the Ramble later on in the movie. He's at one of the bars. He's just got this presence that is so unnerving because of the way he looked.
Mm-hmm.
But his charm comes through on the screen.
It's truly something. I mean, if he were, you move him forward in time and he's working with Rob Zombie, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. If he was still alive, he 100% would have been in the Lords of Salem or something like that.
Yeah, totally. He would be right at home.
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino would have put him in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I swear.
He's kind of a linchpin in Hollywood around that time, with like De Niro and Pacino and all that. So,
do you remember in the 70s there was a guy who made animated movies? There were Felix the Cat, was it, or who was that guy who made those?
Oh God, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Anyway, I swear to God, he must have met Joe Spinell and built a character around him, because I think Joe Spinell looks exactly like. He looks exactly like those characters. He looks exactly like what the 70s of New York looked like to me in my memory.
Yeah.
If you asked me to draw the 1970s New York, I'm going to draw a picture of Joe Spinell.
As well, you should.
Because he looks kind of sleazy. He definitely looks untrustworthy, and like the streets of New York kind of were sleazy and kind of you couldn't trust the people. walking down the street near you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
At any one time in 70s New York, there was a serial killer somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, just in the 80s, they were everywhere, and I think that was because we didn't have the internet, and we were still coming off the summer of love, and everybody was trustworthy, and blah 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 blah. Nowadays, everybody has the internet and apps on their phone, and they watch enough Dateline that they know not to hitchhike.
Thank you, Joe Spinell. Thank you for showing us the underbelly of New York, which is just him. Don't go to New York, kids, or you end up in a room with this guy.
Some people are like, yes. Because let me tell you, I know a couple of my friends who think he was pretty hot. I don't understand it.
What is it? The receding hairline, or the look of a man who just he has BO.
Gay chubby chasers. I mean, the bar is low.
He looks like what body odor is to me.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
And I don't mean that to be mean to the man, but I mean, and it's the character, the way the character is dressed and looked. I'm sure he looked different as a human being, but as this character specifically, that's what he looks like to me.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think that there was a specific sleaziness in this character that wasn't present in some of his other ones.
He looks like a guy who would take tickets at a porno theater.
Yeah. Oh, and then go in and sit next to one of the guys there. I don't know.
There were porno theaters. That just blows my mind. Those existed. Maybe they still do somewhere. I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe in Thailand. I don't know. But like,
there used to be one in Chicago.
There was one here in the Quad Cities. As late as 1980, there was a porn theater here where we are. In our lifetime, Jeff, we had access to a porn theater.
Look, I lived in LA for a year, and there was one like a half a mile away from my apartment. I mean, it was COVID, so that didn't,
Mm-hmm. That blows my mind, though. It still does. I know, and it shouldn't. But I mean, and maybe I'm just incredibly sheltered, having lived in Iowa most of my life. I can't understand the notion of going to a theater to watch pornography. That just there's some kind of disconnect in my mind where that just it shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, it doesn't really do it for me.
Well, I was never one of those guys like get your friends together and look at pornography. Like, what?
Yeah.
I think you should probably be doing that by yourself. Look at all the pornography you want alone. Because I don't need to know about what you're doing. You don't need to know what I'm doing. As long as we're not hurting anybody.
Yep.
I don't get that. But Joe Spinell could probably explain the appeal. Well, let me tell you, kid.
Porno theater. The human porno theater.
This character is the only guy in the world who had sticky floors in his apartment.
Exactly.
From blood and other things. Actually, that's an interesting aspect that this character doesn't necessarily have, is that sexual dimension, because he's not a violent sex offender. He's killing these women because he wants to, take their hair and take it home and brush it and call the mannequins his mom. But there doesn't seem to be like a sexual gratification to that.
Yeah.
Which is different from a lot of, movies of the time. Like there is nudity in this movie, but it's relatively brief, and it's not lingered upon. Which again, this is an exploitation movie about exploiting disturbing violence, but it doesn't take a lot of time lingering on nudity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just sleaze. Sleaze for sleaze's sake.
The relationship between him and the photographer character is interesting because there's almost this attempt, not really, but this attempt to kind of show you this guy could have had another life. This guy could have been something else. Had circumstances worked out, this guy could have been one of those weird figures in the art world who, was the benefactor for somebody who was more important and more talented.
Yep.
A nice little fantasy element.
Yeah. I'm glad that you got to see this then. I thought you'd seen it as well. I'm glad that
I think I mixed it up with Maniac Cop, which I know I've seen.
Oh yeah.
So and plus Joe Spinell is in every movie in the early 80s, so I'm sure I've seen many Joe Spinell movies and just kind of put them all together into one movie that I thought was Maniac.
Anything else on Maniac?
No, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, I think I think everybody should see it if you're a fan of 80s exploitation movies.
It is definitely worth checking out. It's so much better than so much of the exploitation stuff of the early 80s, like Maniac Cop. Like, it's way better than that. The type of stuff that were actual exploitation movies. This seems like an attempt to make an actual movie about an actual character. And yes, it's got a lot of blood and gore to it, but it's servicing an actual character study that's happening.
Yeah, it's more about the character than about the actions that he performs.
People get caught up in the head getting blown off of the guy in the car, but that's part of it.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't like Tom Savini, so to see his head explode, most people really like him.
This is a top 5 or even top 3 head explosion in movie history.
Oh yeah, I prefer this one to Scanners.
Definitely, this one makes Scanners look kind of amateur, honestly. I noticed like there's actual seems to be bits of skull.
Yeah,
and I was really that's impressive.
Yeah, that's the thing about Tom Savini. He's all about realism.
I shouldn't be impressed by this, but I am.
You should be impressed by it.
The movie's got no respect for cops either, which is great. That's another
fine by me.
Don't even let the cops have a line. They just see everything and walk out. Great.
All right. Well, I guess.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up. Jeff, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I will hopefully have seen 3 movies by next week.
Hey, if all goes well. We need a classic too.
Okay. I'll think of something.
All right. Bye.
Bye.